name's Peter Young. Thank you all for coming. This is the newcomer orientation. Thank you. And I think it's kind of obligatory that I sort of share a little bit of my story because it's kind of the format, although I'm really sick of talking about it, to be honest. But through that, I want to distill it down to like a few basic lessons that you can take with you, because I think the obligation of anyone at a podium is not to talk about themselves, not to talk about their projects, but ultimately to give people the most actionable information they can take out in the world and help animals with. So hopefully I can do that with a few minutes I have. A little bit about my story. I got involved, I was in the punk rock scene. I got involved in activism through that, getting exposed to the plight of animals, and I realized very early on that what's going on with animals right now and what we do to animals is without question, as somebody else mentioned, the most urgent and significant injustice in the history of the world. And when anybody tell you otherwise, people are going to tell you, your parents are going to say, oh, that's just her thing, or that's her what. Listen, this is the biggest movement, the biggest injustice, the biggest fight in the history of the world, so don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And I recognized that early on at an early age. I became vegan at 18, and you're a visual guy. I like this. Oh, there we go. And so I got involved in activism, and much like Hope mentioned, I was involved in similar kind of things. Around the same time, 97, I started doing lockdowns and civil disobedience. And very quickly I realized this was not getting the job done. This was a good activity to partake of during the day, but I also wanted to supplement that with nighttime activities that actually saved animals in real time. So I started to learn about the Animal Liberation Front, and without going into all the details, a friend and I went on a road trip. We raided 6 fur farms in 2 weeks. And we released somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 mink in a couple of weeks from 6 different fur farms. And what I learned from that experience is how important it is to fight smarter and not harder. Because I accomplished more in those 2 weeks than I had in my entire activism up to that point. And just by sort of willing to break the rules and step outside my comfort zone, I was able to achieve more for animals. In just those 2 weeks, the first night of that road trip, we achieved more than we had in my entire career as an activist. So that was a very powerful lesson for me, something you can learn from. And again, it's not so much the exact tactic that I'm necessarily encouraging you to do, although I certainly hope you do. It's more just the fundamental of fighting smarter and not harder, and figuring out those 5% of efforts that will yield 95% of your results. So eventually I got caught, I got indicted on terrorism charges, had to go on the run. And I was on the run for 8 years from the FBI. And what I learned from that experience is how important it is to understand that you are bigger than this movement. You as an individual and what you're fighting for is bigger than your friends. It's bigger than any sort of movement or label you can put on yourselves, because I got stripped of all my friends. I got stripped of the movement. I had to live an entirely underground existence for many years. And I didn't have the movement, I didn't have anything, but I was able to still maintain my role as an activist and still do my part without all of that. So you're tremendously fortunate that you have a support group here, you have all these people. I couldn't show up at these conferences when I was on the run for 8 years, from 98 to 2005. I couldn't show up at events like this. I would, with a hood on my head, and I'd sit in the back row and put my head down so no one would recognize me, but I didn't have that, that ability that you have. So it's you're very, very fortunate. But don't rely on your friends. Your friends could all sell out tomorrow. I'm sorry to tell you that. In fact, they probably will. So don't rely on your friends. Find that inner strength and understand that you are, what's going on inside, what drives you is more important, and it transcends your friendships in this movement. Okay, I think I have maybe 4 minutes. I got arrested eventually. I served 2 years in prison. Again, this is going back a lot of years, so it's kind of silly to talk about it now. But the prison experience did teach me some very fundamental, important lessons about activism. One of which is, well, there's a few things. Demystifying fear is one. When I went to prison, I was terrified of it, and when I got there, I said, this is nothing like what I thought it was, and what the hell was I afraid of? This is a joke. It's a bunch of guys just walking around in slippers and bathrobes, like watching Ultimate Fighting Wrestling. I had 2 nicknames in prison. One was the fur bandit, and the other one was eco pimp. And there's no lessons to be drawn from that. It's just funny. But I just want to go rapid fire through. So let's get away from my story. I want to get rapid fire into like some fundamental lessons I hope you can learn. That if I was a new activist, this is the stuff I wish I had been told. If I was going to show up and say I was 18 or a new activist, the talk I wish I could have heard from someone like me at a podium right now would be how to pick locks, or like how to rappel into labs from the roof after removing an air vent. That's the kind of stuff I wish I heard. But the kind of stuff I should have heard, the kind of stuff I wish people had told me is what I'm going to go through right now really quickly. One thing is media is very, very important. I was dismissive of it for a long time. Media is crucial. I learned this when some activists in Seattle broke into an egg farm and took some chickens, which couldn't, in and of itself, would have saved a handful of chickens. But they videotaped the egg farm inside. They capitalized on the sensationalism of the ALF, released that footage to the media, and millions of people. This is the 90s when you didn't have MFA doing this stuff, so nobody knew what an egg farm looked like. You had the Animal Liberation Front capitalize on their action to give the media market around Seattle, millions of people the first look they've ever had inside of an egg farm. I thought that was brilliant, and I dedicated myself from that point on when I noticed this. What they'd achieved with this simple action, I said, for whatever I do from this point forward, there's going to be a media component to it, no matter what. So anything you do, whether you're doing a protest, send out a press release. If you're going to throw a brick through a window, send out a press release. Everything you do, send out a press release. Just be a ruthless, forgive my language, ruthless media whore as much as you possibly can. Because not to the extent that you compromise, the message that we're trying to communicate about the animals, but do whatever you can to get media attention. It's very, very crucial. So real quick, the next thing, and Hope mentioned some awesome books that you should read, and I've been really impressed with the books coming out in the movement in the last few years. By and large, I would say the best lessons you're going to get about animal rights activism will not come from animal rights books. They're going to come from reading books about marketing. They're going to come from reading books about, they'll teach you how to deliver your message. They're going to come from reading books about criminals, not necessarily for the specific tactical advice so you can go out and break the law, but books about true life books about criminals. They teach creative problem solving, and I think that seriously, and I'm not even saying that like tongue in cheek, but really. I read this book called The Unsolved Crimes of Phil Cresta about this master burglar, and what I was impressed with was not the tactics, but what he actually was able, the way he was able to reverse engineer man-made systems and figure out loopholes, and I think that's a powerful lesson for activism. Read books about psychology, read a book called Influence by Cialdini, and then read books about strategy, like The Art of War. These are books that are invaluable for your activism. Next lesson real quick, leverage your strengths, don't try to fix your weaknesses, okay? Like if I try to be a hip hop artist for the animals, like totally fail, like everyone knows I can't rap, but what I do have is like, that I can leverage is like, to some small extent is like, I've got a story so the media will come to me sometimes and I can use that platform to take the message straight to the animals. If somebody sets trucks on fire at a cattle farm, in Central California, and the media comes to me, I can immediately turn that around and just focus solely on the animals and say, this is why someone would do this, whether or not you agree with it, this is what the plight of animals, this is what the animals go through, this is what people would drive someone to do this. And I can capitalize on that, my sort of the leverage I have of having gone to prison and direct that right towards a tremendous benefit for the animals. So leverage your strengths, figure out what those are, and hammer away at them. Next lesson real quick. How am I doing on time? A minute? 1 minute, okay. So next one real quick. Nothing is ever as hard as you think it is. Whatever problem you think is insurmountable, you're wrong. And I learned that early on. I didn't have any burglary training, but I was 18 years old, and there's this lab in Seattle that we wanted to get into. We got up on the roof, unscrewed the skylight, and rappelled down into this laboratory. We had no idea what we were doing. There wasn't even internet at this point, but we just had a strong enough why, and the how took care of itself. And I think that's the most important lesson, probably what this whole talk is. If you have a strong enough why, the how will always take care of itself. So anything you think is a problem or an obstacle, you're wrong. Next one, have a focus. Any book on strategy you're ever going to read is going to tell you that victories will only come from repeated focused actions. So focus, focus, focus. Don't focus so narrow that you're only spending a lifetime focusing on like a particular animal, say like an animal like a roadside zoo or something. You want to sort of strike the right balance between winnable goals that are going to save a lot of animals, but also not getting distracted with moving from one thing to the next. Focus is crucial. What else? I think we do the animals a huge disservice when we tell people to only do what makes them comfortable. So get outside your comfort zone. I'll just leave it at that. De-emphasize internet activism. This is the most controversial one. Everyone wants to kill me when I bring this up because it's such a nuanced point that I don't think I ever really can capture the message fully in one talk. But just understand that animals don't die in cyberspace. That doing Facebook, just be really critical about directing your efforts towards animals, towards the internet. That's all I'm going to say. It's a powerful tool, but it can also function as a way to delude yourself into thinking that you're accomplishing things without actually doing things. So just please try to understand what I'm saying without actually doing things. So there's a couple more I was going to get into. I want to go to Q&A, so feel free to talk to me afterwards to get those. But the most important thing in just understand this, your only role as an activist, if you're new, just understand it's really simple. Two things. Be the best possible asset you can be to the animals at all times, and be the animal abuser's worst nightmare. Those are your only two jobs. That's it. Thank you.